Amazing by RDM Fave Clips. Category: My Hero Academia. Rating: Teen. Pairings: Midoriya, Hisashi, and Eri. Midoriya, Hisashi, and Midoriya, Izuku. Midoriya, Hisashi, and Aizawa, Shouta. Midoriya, Izuku, and Eri. Midoriya, Izuku, and Shouta. Summary: Aizawa did not lose Eri at the grocery store. He absolutely did not lose her, because that would be illogical. However, he really needs to figure out how Midoriya always seems to know when she needs him or nearby. And why does Eri have the heat lasers on Midoriya whenever he's nearby? He wouldn't be in this mess if it wasn't for that. Disclaimer: neither I nor the writer of this fanfiction own any rights to the My Hero Academia franchise. Story begins. It was common knowledge in the Aizawa Yamada household that Aizawa cannot be trusted at grocery stores to do the grocery shopping. Something always seems to happen that makes the experience into one that could rival his beloved Class 1A antics. But Aizawa had no choice but to do grocery shopping today. They were out of everything. Yamada would barely have time to sleep between patrols and his radio show, thank Netsu for the school breaks. Hitoshi was away for the week, visiting his biological grandparents, who would have taken him in if their health wasn't so frail. And Eri was still too young and terrified to be by herself. My mother is whack. Aizawa could have used the Hero Network Door Runner, but he refused to let more people know that he was a pro-hero than necessary, so he had to go to the grocery store with Eri. It started off fine. Everyone kept to themselves. No old lady trying to pinch Eri's cheeks. No beauty person trying to force him into a sample of skincare. No hostages. No fires. No random robots falling through the ceiling and exploding. Yes, that happened twice. There was maniacal laughter, and the voice screaming, "Explosions are the way of the future, Majima-sensei." Everything was going great. That is, until he finally decided on trying the new flavor of jelly packets, black cherry coffee. That he realized Eri was gone. No one came and got her because his situational awareness is amazing. He forgot how many times he had to duck just to avoid a can of oranges hitting the back of his head because a fight broke out in the store. Still, she didn't tell him where she was going because she was still too timid, shy, and scared of being punished and being used for experimentation again. In fact, the only time she wanders off is when Midoriya is nearby. In this instant, Aizawa had his phone out and speed-dialed his problem child. "Sensei?" Midoriya said as he answered the phone. "Eri is with you, correct?" Aizawa said, already leaving the store as he tracked Midoriya's phone. "No, she's... Oh, I see her." Midoriya said, "Hi, Eri." "Deku." Deku! Aizawa heard Eri say, as his student let out a small oof. Out from what he assumed was Eri hug-tackling him. "Minty, is everything okay?" an unfamiliar voice said, which had Aizawa running to the location. "Oh, why hello there, aren't you just a little cutie?" Aizawa did run faster when he heard Eri scream out in fear. That only happens when he's out grocery shopping, he swears. Thank the tea gods. He just had to round the corner next to the small bookshop, and the first thing that Aizawa sees is the yellow light of Aries' quirk being activated on a man who had dark emerald green scaled tail that laid across his lap as he sat on the floor. His toxic green eyes were watching Eri carefully as the dark emerald scales that protected his dragon-shaped head shone in the light. Eri, Midoriya said, "It's okay. He didn't mean to scare you. I promise he won't hurt you." Toxic green eyes moved over to look over at his student, who was standing next to the dragon man. "You're a hero, so no, you can't break into Tartarus and have raw drumsticks," Midoriya said. But Aries' red eyes opened as her quirk started to fade, tears in her eyes. But just like Aizawa, who hadn't activated his quirk, she was confused. She had turned her quirk off by herself. Progress, even if it's by a dragon stranger that his problem child seems to know. But the dragon seems unaffected. "No," Midoriya said. "Chicken wings?" Dragon Man said. "They got burnt so badly they turned into dust," Midoriya said. "The breast?" the Dragon Man said, with a little flap of his tail. "Or the insides?" "You are not eating him," Midoriya said as he put his hands to his hips. "Minty," the Dragon Man said with a loud whine. His green eyes went back to Eri as Aizawa stayed in the shadow watching over his 1 kids. "Can you believe this, cutie? Deku, the coolest hero in the world, is denying me a chance to eat some chicken," the dragon playfully sniffled. "At this rate, he's going now. Eraserhead will take back his spot as the coolest hero." Midoriya gave an unimpressed stare as Eri giggled behind her hands. "You'll complain about how much your stomach hurts if I allow you to eat him for a week," Midoriya said. "You should be thanking me." "Did you forget about the beak-shaped mask that the guy wore?" Dragonhead said. "He's a chicken. I will be fine. Besides, Eraserhead will totally let me have raw drumsticks. If it's required for you to survive, yes. But I would also try to find an animal substitute that is not a human." Aizawa said. Apologies. Aizawa said, finally revealing himself. The man with the dragon head looked over at Aizawa with wide eyes. "Oh, my biscuits, Minty. That is Eraserhead. Why is Eraserhead here?" "How long has she been standing there?" the dragon man said. "Around the time you sat down, and shortly before Eri stopped her quirk by herself," Midoriya said. "You could have said something sooner," Dragonhead said as he stood up. Aizawa blinked at how tall the man was, and within that blink the dragon man and Midoriya were gone without a trace. "Dad, did you remember the groceries? Also, the dragon man seems nice. I like him," Eri said. "Deku didn't seem afraid, and once I realized that, I wasn't afraid." Aizawa groaned. He had so many questions, but his gut was telling him that Midoriya was safe, and Midoriya didn't seem on edge or nervous. The next time Aizawa and Eri ran into Midoriya and the man with the dragon head was at night, when Aizawa was so glad he wasn't a teacher of children. He was a teacher of teenagers, not children, who are cold-hearted and just bullied his daughter over illogical things that she couldn't help. Honestly, if he would have known that Eri was invited to the sleepover because it was princess-themed, and they only invited her because she resembled a unicorn, or that they would try to peer pressure her into wearing a short-sleeved princess dress, and make fun of her for not knowing all about Disney princesses until she started to cry, then they had the audacity to make fun of Eri for crying. "Dad," Eri said quietly, lifting her head up from his shoulder as he carried her back home through the night. "Can we see Deku, please?" "Of course," Aizawa said. "I'll call him in the morning. How does that sound?" Red puffy eyes blinked back at him. Tears were still trailing down her face as her bottom lip wobbled. "But Deku is at the park," Eri said, pointing at the park that was across the way. Aizawa looked over at the park and frowned. He did see Midoriya on the ground by an old park light that gave an old faded glow of light. A green blanket was under him, but the Dragon Man was back. Every time he asked Midoriya about the Dragon Man, Midoriya avoided or deflected the question, and even Bakugo never knew who the Dragon Man was. The Dragon Man had his tail wrapped around the general area of Midoriya. His dragon head was sitting on Midoriya's lap, his eyes closed while Midoriya scratched his head with one hand, his other hand holding onto his heroic law textbook. "Eri, how did you know Midoriya was over there?" Aizawa said. "Because it was 9:45 at night and Midoriya shouldn't even be out of the UA dorms. He started to walk over there because he really wanted the answers over the Dragon Man." "I don't know. It's just a feeling. We just know where each other are. And he usually knows when I need him or you or him," Eri says, laying her head back on his shoulder. Aizawa frowned because she was right. Midoriya even knew what was affecting her most of the time. "You're going to stay until you're done with your ecstasis this time, right?" Midoriya said as they got closer and flipped the page in his book. "Mm-hmm," the dragon said with a hum. "Don't have a choice. It's been a couple of years since I was able to go through the process all the way." "No wonder you're so lethargic and peeling so much," Midoriya said. "It's disgusting. I feel old." "That's because you are old in human years. But really, how many old skills do you have that are weighing you down? Don't be a brat, Minty." "Deku?" Eri said, causing Midoriya to look up and Aizawa to blink. "Eri? Aizawa-sensei? What song is this?" Power Slam by Paradelalis. "Eri? Aizawa-sensei? What are you two doing here? I thought you had a sleepover tonight, Eri. Did you have a nightmare?" Midoriya said, placing the bookmark in his textbook. "No. The girls were bullying me about not wearing a short-sleeved princess dress and not knowing about princesses," Eri said. Has Eri seen Midoriya's eyes like this before? Glowing a blue-green color and slits like pupils? Aizawa thought. "You're too young to be dating princesses or princes," the Dragon Man said. "Plus, they're too overrated." But they said I should know who Elsa and Cinderella and Jasmine are," Harry said, sniffling. "They said I was stupid because I don't know Sleeping Beauty." "They're the stupid ones," Dragon Man said, rolling onto his back as Midoriya scratched under his mouth. "They don't even realize that we're in the presence of a true unicorn and a princess. Besides, Aurora gives us dragons a bad rap." "It wasn't the best experience for Eri," Aizawa said. "But would it be okay if we join you? Eri wants to visit you when she felt that you were nearby, problem child, Aizawa said. And why were you outside the dorms? Ah, so the little unicorn imprinted on Minty, the dragon man said. That's good. Imprint? Eri said, as she sat down on Aizawa's lap. Eri giggled as Midoriya moved his hand away from the dragon's head, dull green flakes falling off his hand. Midoriya made an over-exaggerated look of disgust as he flicked more flakes off. A whine escaped the dragon's throat, and toxic green eyes finally opened, only to stare at Midoriya with pleading eyes. You're worse than a child, Midoriya said, as he went back to scratching the man's chin. Feels good. Anyways, imprinting is sort of like your soul and heart have chosen someone as a family member. It's common amongst mythical creature quirk types, mythical mutation types, the dragon man said with a hum. Eri's cranberry eyes looked over to Midoriya with a silent plea of explaining it so she could understand. You know when you say I'm your big brother, and Aizawa-sensei is your dad, just within 3 days of us saving you, but it took 2 months for you to finally call Yamada-sensei and Shinso family, Midoriya said. Eri nodded. That's imprinting. Midoriya said. We? Aizawa thought. Don't know when it happens until we start to feel the connection. So kind of like how this is my second time meeting Mr. Dragon, but I already feel like he's an uncle, Eri said. Are you referring to him? Midoriya said, pointing to the dragon man. She nodded. Name's not Mr. Dragon, Midoriya said with a chuckle. Are you going to introduce yourself this time? The dragon rolled back onto his stomach and opened his eyes, letting out a loud yawn. Hisashi, Midoriya, the dragon said. He leaned forward, stretching himself out towards Eri until gray smoke came from his nostrils and blew towards her. She pressed herself closer to Aizawa, who had one hand on his capture scarf and the other rubbing circles on her back. Would you like to pet me? What about my quirk? It's Kirsten. Quirks are like knights that are always with you, Hisashi said. You mean like the stars? Eri said. No. I mean like people in armor who protect the princess's quirks. Oh, the princess. Quirks won't activate at first unless you are in danger. Most children who have a tough time controlling their quirk is because they were in a bad situation and needed to defend themselves. But Mom didn't want me, because I made Dad disappear, Eri said. Then your dad was a bad man and was going to hurt you, Hisashi said with a low growl. Besides, you're a unicorn, mythical quirk user. Izuku and I are both immune to your quirk unless we are hurt. Dragons and unicorns. Quirks are closely related to each other. Immune? Eri said. You can't hurt us when your quirk goes out of control, Midoriya said. That's the reason I was screaming when we saved you from overhaul. Chicken man, Hisashi grumbled as his tail wrapped around Midoriya. Wasn't because of your quirk, it was because I thought I had lost someone who I had imprinted on, and I couldn't save them myself, Midoriya said. Song sucks. Nice. This is interesting, but may I ask how? Aizawa said. And while I am glad for the information over imprinting, who did you imprint upon, problem child? Isn't it obvious? Hisashi said. No, Aizawa said. Unicorns and dragons are closely related and are usually each other's protectors, Hisashi said. Anyway, my head is getting itchy and my neck is hurting, so he nuzzled Eri's cheek with his snout. Wanna bet me? Eri looked at Hisashi, Midoriya, Aizawa, before looking back at Hisashi. She reached out and ran her hand over his scales that were between his eyes. Your scales are so scaly and so cool to the touch, Eri said as Hisashi started to dragon purr. Problem child, can you explain to me what I just learned? Aizawa said. That I'm part dragon, or that I imprinted on someone? Midoriya said. Both. Oh, well, Eri is currently petting my dad's head, if that explains the dragon part, along with the glowing eyes and why I get most of my homework done at night. Midoriya said. Your dad is a dragon, and I'm just now finding out about it. My dad is an international underground hero, so it's for the safety reasons, Midoriya said. Minty, your scratches feel amazing, Hisashi said as his tail thumped against the ground. Good. It will give me a break from getting disgusting scales on my hands, Midoriya said. Thank you for not running away from a razorhead this time. Too heavy, too tired, and too heavy to care, Hisashi said, putting his head on Eri's lap with his eyes closed. I'm sure tomorrow I will panic over the fact that I'm talking to my second favorite hero in the world, who just so happens to be my role model. Aizawa will deny that he blushed a little or that he was speechless that night, but Eri's tears have dried up. She didn't talk about the sleepover the next day, but she was happy to talk about how she was able to pet a dragon last night to her pops and big brother. That is the end of Amazing by RDM Fave Clips.